Welcome to the Holistic Wealth and Health Podcast. Your co-hosts, Jason Smith and Brian Bibbo, will inspire and teach you how to prosper in your mind, body, and spirit, not just your financial life. Joining forces with field experts, Jason and Brian are here to help you focus on what matters most in your life, living well.
Hi, this is Jason Smith, and welcome to the Holistic Wealth and Health Podcast. And today I have Carrie Kerskie back again. Carrie, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me back. I feel privileged. I get to come back twice.
Yeah, I was telling Carrie before we got on that she was definitely one of my favorites and highlights of last year. So when I saw her in the calendar, I was super excited to have her back again. Carrie, there were so many insights and kind of aha moments as I heard you talk. And I definitely recommend for people to go back and listen to that. But I was just looking at my notes and some of the things around the misconception around people try to avoid the internet. They think if they don't set it up with their banking and all of that, that they're going to be more protected. But you debunked that myth for me and for the listeners. So that was really insightful. And just the credit freezes, I wasn't doing that. And I've started to do that. Privacy focused browsers on search engines. I had notes about that. Now I'm using those most of the time. And anytime I'm doing searches on the internet, two-factor authentication. I used to think it was a pain in the butt. Now I actually appreciate it based on what I learned from you and just even those longer passwords and just being more intentional about protecting that information. So I wanted to thank you for that because I put into action a lot of those key things you talked about.
Well, that's great. Mission accomplished, and you get a gold star. So
that's awesome. And just for anybody who didn't hear the last podcast, Carrie is an author and consultant on identity theft, privacy, and cybersecurity. And she's actually a certified identity fraud investigator. Our last podcast was on fraud. This one's just a refresh of kind of everything that's new, especially with the utilization happening of AI. And so I'm excited to hear your thoughts on that. Carrie, I know we touched on it last year, but now a year later, shoot, I was using it for an hour and a half this morning. So probably improperly, you're going to tell me once I learn the things not to do today. But no, I think that's going to be great. And Kerskie Group is your company, Carrie, private investigation agency providing identity fraud and cyber threat risk management services to executives and private clients. And so you're a speaker and you've written a couple books as well that if people want to check out your public identity, because nothing is private anymore, and protect your identity. So is that right? So 2 books, Carrie?
Yes. Yep. 2 books. I keep saying that the second one, as soon as it came out, I could have done a whole nother edition of it because this stuff changes frequently. So it's in the works of having an update, but everything is still relevant. Just a few little minor things have updated since then. But yeah, constantly evolving. And then as we're going to talk about today, it seems the criminals are always, 10 steps ahead of us. So we have to keep up.
You know what, Carrie, what's funny is I was preparing my thoughts for your podcast and I was reviewing my notes from the last time we talked. I realized there were some things I did, but there were things I didn't do. And honestly, I reached out to my partner, Jennifer, and I said, Jennifer, I'm like, let's just hire Carrie because it's just not worth the risk. There's things I didn't do that leave me vulnerable. And it's just not worth the risk, right, of the vulnerability. So I know I'm going to be hiring you and reaching out to you. You'll get a call from us because I think it's just too important. Let's go front and center with what I just discussed a moment ago, the AI usage, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and best practices of what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. So AI, it's kind of interesting. So those of us that are in this space, AI is not new to us. We know that it's been out there. We know that that criminals, those with malicious intent, they've already been embracing and using this stuff. It's just now it's gone mainstream, meaning everyone else is now starting to get involved with this. So they, just like everything else, like all technology, they're ahead of us again. Using it, I think is great. There are a lot of good things that can be done with it. It definitely makes it easier when you're searching online. You get results and summaries better as opposed to having to go to website to website to website to click. But then the drawback to all of that, it's the old saying of garbage in, garbage out. So a lot of the things we're finding that when people go online, and we've tested it too, we've tried out a couple of these AI tools, and we ask questions based on what we know, based on what we've seen with our experience working with victims and prevention and such. And most of the time, it's not correct, the responses that you're getting. And again, it's only going out and searching what's out there and trying to summarize it. And there's no fact checking. So that's one thing that I really want people to be careful of when they're using it is don't take it at face value. You still have to take that extra step and confirm the information or validate it from another source. And, because you have a lot of journalists and such out there and they're starting to use it. There are more publications online and they're pushing out these articles. And oftentimes, no one is writing it. This is all AI generated content and there's no fact checking. So that's one of the big things I see just kind of on a general. Not to mention how the criminals are using it. That's a whole nother layer. It's made everything much easier for them. They're writing programs, how to do malware or creating malware programs, just using AI. They don't even have to be a programmer anymore. So it's very interesting to watch, but we need to proceed with caution.
What about Carrie? So, for example, I was using it for an hour and a half this morning, and I used it in a way just to share we had a new project manager start, and the project manager is going to be helping me just with business kind of related things as well as personal and my farm and just the coordination of all the different stakeholders, different people involved, points of contact, helping with projects, tasks, etc. My wife was a little overwhelmed. Today was the first day that we did like a meeting with her, like an onboarding kind of meeting. And it was like, oh my gosh, there's so much we need to teach her and so much we don't have any onboarding or training curriculum or any of that. So we sat down with her. And I said to AI, we did this together, my wife and I, and her name's Lauren. And I said, interview me and ask me a series of questions to better understand what my situation is, to create a onboarding and training curriculum for a new project manager, including blah, blah, blah. And they're going to be managing blah, blah, blah. And they'll be doing these projects and tasks and working with these people. And it came back and I said, ask me one question at a time and all of that, and then create an agenda for what needs to be covered in an onboarding meeting and any questions that we need to ask her and questions she needs to ask us. And it created this whole unbelievable agenda and multi-step. In that instance, I wasn't really worried because I didn't give my names of my businesses. I didn't give my names. I didn't give any personal information. I wasn't relying on any kind of like research for them to go out and do. So I felt really comfortable, and it was astounding what it created and the things that all the structure was there, the full agenda, the checklist, all the things we need to do to properly onboard and train her. And it was like, boom, just all created. And AI asked me about 10 questions, one by one, that I answered in thorough detail. So I felt pretty comfortable and safe. I'm sure there's other ways, definitely that you could use it, but just share with me your thoughts on that. And then if there was any kind of vulnerability I was exposing myself to that I wasn't thinking about, and then what are other instances where maybe it's not a safe way to use it?
Yeah, so the example you gave, that's a perfect example. Use these tools as a launch pad, if you will, because I'm sure you didn't take exactly what you gave and just took it at face value. You probably had to tweak it and kind of adjust it a little bit to make it exactly your own. And that's perfectly fine. And like you said, you weren't giving any sensitive information. You weren't giving, private details about yourself or, how you do your operations. You were kind of just high level, general, here's an overview type of thing. That's perfectly fine. Where I see people getting into trouble is when they're asking sensitive questions, or businesses, organizations. They're asking the AI to do an evaluation of their finances, or to, do a competitive analysis, and they're giving, kind of their secret sauce, if you will. Who else is out there doing it? And the thing is, when you're putting all this information into the AI, that's adding to its knowledge. And it doesn't stay in like a nice little box where that's only knowledge back and forth between you and the AI. That's out there for everyone else. So if you're giving some of this information, if somebody else asks a question and it's similar, or like I said, if a company's using it and then it says, oh, compare my stuff to that company, now it has those details that it can share across the platform. And definitely do not ask, anything with your sensitive about, credit cards, bank accounts, social security numbers. Just like the best practices for the internet, don't put any of that sensitive stuff out on the internet, meaning don't do
Yeah.
a Google search by it.
Yeah.
Same thing with this. So you just have to kind of think about how I'm using it, the information that I'm providing it, could that be used by others and elsewhere? And if so, could it harm me, and how? So you just have to kind of think of it, because it's no different than if you were going to hire a consultant, or hire, a mentor to kind of help you work through this process. But at least with that mentor, it would only be maybe the other mentees that they have that could kind of benefit from that conversation. Or this is OpenAI. This is anyone in the world who can also
Right.
tap into that. So that's really some of the things to take into consideration when you're using it. When we're writing our articles and we're doing our content, we do not use AI for it. The only thing we may use AI for is to help with editing, proofing,
Yeah.
cleaning up some of the grammar type of errors type things. Or sometimes it'll help with creating a creative title. But for content itself, and this is a big mistake I see a lot of people doing, especially those that are content creators. They just say, oh, here's a topic, and boom, and it spits out some, 700-word article, and they post it on their website. So
Right.
again, that's why you have to find out who's the source, who you're working with, what do they know, what's their experience, and is it coming from them, or is it AI generated? But the example you gave, I think is perfectly fine with that, helping to do with procedures. I've done it myself for drafting up some very basic procedures. I'm like, there's no point in me recreating the wheel. I'll just ask it, it'll type it, and it's basic, procedures everybody uses. So I think that's perfectly fine. But again, just think about the information you're putting out and how that could be used elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I started using it more as like simple to-dos and cleaning up emails and just task and research oriented. And now it's more become a thought partner, which has been pretty incredible. But to your point, you got to be careful and make sure you don't accidentally share any personal information as you're thinking out loud, asking it to interview you and ask questions, and you end up just having a dialogue like you do a person. It's pretty easy to get caught up into that, to make a mistake.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And like you said, you're using it as a tool to help research or look through your emails or consolidate or clean up. Just make sure that the AI program that you're using, and again, we go back to terms of service and privacy policies, the two documents that nobody ever wants to pay attention to. That's where it'll tell you how that information is being used. There was one, I forget, it was, I want to say might have been Zoom. I don't know. It was one of the platforms that people use for video chats and such.
Yep.
And I think they said when their AI came out, or maybe it was something through Microsoft. Anyways, it said that when it came out, that whatever you put into it goes into its master database of knowledge.
Right.
So again, it's not keeping everything confined within your account and your information. And if you're asking it, here, search through my emails, or clean or do this or do that, it has to kind of read through and look through it. So just be very
Right.
cognizant of where that information goes and if it's within your environment only or if it's for the masses. So that's something. And
Yeah.
again, terms of
I don't
service, privacy policies.
Yeah. I don't know as much, and we'll move on from AI here in a moment, but it's like, I use it to help me word or craft an email and then copy and paste, but I can't imagine like letting it loose in your whole inbox because there's too much private information in there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it amazes me, like, everything you use now wants to have an AI component to it,
Right.
and I find myself most of the time turning it off just because, if I'm having a private, conversation, a video conference with a client and we're discussing sensitive things, I don't want the AI listening in and trying to give me a summary of the conversation because that means it's listening to what we're saying, and
Exactly.
I don't know where that's going and who has access to it. So
Yeah.
I find myself here's another example. There's not just AI, but all the technology. So I had to get a new car. It was time for me to get a new one because I do a lot of traveling, speaking, and such. And I was putting it off because I'm like, the amount of money the new cars cost now, I'm like, I'd rather buy a classic, something beautiful that is
Right.
an actual functioning car, not a computer that drives. But it didn't make sense with the mileage that I'd be putting on it. So I had to get this new car. And all of the features that it came with. When I sat in this car and turned it on, it asked me which user was driving. I'm like, this is insane. What happened to just driving a car? So
Yeah.
that's why I say, I know I don't have a car. I have a computer that I drive.
That's a really good way to put it. And you're
Yep.
right. You're
Yep.
right.
And all that technology, I mean, it came out not too long ago. All these car dealerships were selling your driving because all the safety features, they were selling that information to the insurance companies. So some of the
Yeah,
car
that's right.
manufacturers, yeah, they now have said we're not doing it. But like 2 months before that came out, I was working with a client and we got their LexisNexis report, which is a data aggregation company. And we were looking at it because they had an identity theft issue and we were trying to kind of see how wide it was spreading. And when we got the report, there were 86 incidents on this report. And it was like how many rapid accelerations, hard brakes, how many miles, how long each trip was. And I'm like, what is this? Where's this coming from? And
Right.
then we figured out it was from the car because they have the app that they use with the car. And then
Yep.
2 months later, the article came out that they were selling all that information. So for my new car, all that's turned off.
Yeah.
So again, just talking about with the AI and kind of how, we're using it for one purpose, but we don't know why it was intended, who built it, and what they're doing with the rest of it. So just got to be careful with that.
Carrie, let's talk about just along that same vein of your private information getting out there or leaving yourself vulnerable, and what are the biggest instances or examples you might be able to share of mistakes that are commonly made by most of us that ultimately you've seen firsthand how that mistake can turn into a catastrophe, so we can just raise awareness and start to make even more progress in not exposing ourselves or making mistakes that could leave us vulnerable to fraud, identity theft, or other bad things.
So one of the biggest things that we see, and with all the victims that we work with, whether it's identity theft or they fell for a scam, and I hate to say falling for it because they were manipulated, but any of the victims that we work with, the big thing we find out, especially for the frauds and scams and the cyber issues, everyone's busy. We have so many things going on in our lives right now. And so we're distracted. The internet and using technology today, we all have the attention span of a gnat. It's like we have to do it right now. Nobody wants to stop and think and pause. If you get a text message, you have this urge where, oh, I have to respond immediately. No, you don't. Put your phone down, walk away, think about it, come back and respond, when it's appropriate. So that's the biggest mistake I see people making is that they're just on this autopilot of being constantly connected and instantly responding. When they get a phone call, when they get an email, when they get a text message, if there's a link, if there's something, instead of taking a deep breath and pausing and thinking it through, or like we say, validate or eliminate, take the time to validate. And if you can't validate that information to be true, get rid of it,
Mhm.
because more than likely it's a scam. And if it's that important and it is legitimate, they're going to find another way to contact you.
Yeah.
So if you get something, it looks like it's a text message, coming from your bank saying, we've got suspicious transaction. Did you do this? Don't click the link or call the phone number. Log into your account, open your app, or call the phone number on the bank's website. Don't do a Google search for the phone number because
Right.
criminals can put the bad numbers at the top of the search results. So it's just taking, and we kind of refer to it as a privacy pause, just taking a moment, stop and think, and then take the appropriate actions to validate. And if you can't validate it, get rid of it, because it's that knee-jerk quick response is what seems to get people in trouble most of the time.
That is really insightful and good advice, because I just referenced back a couple months ago, and thank God nothing happened. But I did do a knee jerk response and I clicked a link. And immediately I was like, oh man, I shouldn't have clicked that. I know it just looks a little funky now, and now that it's downloaded into my own
Right.
head, right? I was like, oh, that looks a little funky. I don't think I'll wait. And it was something around the lines of, I think it was like they were trying to a mail delivery error or
Oh,
something.
yeah. Hmm.
And they were trying, and it was like too late, but it was a knee jerk. And
And it
so
happens.
great
It
advice.
happens.
Yeah.
We get busy and then things happen. And there have been times I've almost clicked on something and I'm like, wait a minute, something doesn't, look right. But yeah, it's just taking that time to stop and think. The other thing, if you do ever have an instance like that where you get busy, not thinking, you're distracted, and you click on something, and all of a sudden that that pit in the stomach of like, uh-oh,
Yes.
what did
Yes.
I do? What we recommend: immediately get off the internet. Put your phone in airplane mode, or turn off your Wi-Fi, or if you're using an Ethernet cable, disconnect it, because whatever you clicked on, it's doing something and it needs the internet connection to complete it or to do the next step. So by getting that device offline, it can't do what else it's supposed to do, and you sever that connection. And then
Yeah.
that way you have time to have someone check it and make sure everything's good. And if it, you get the thumbs up, everything's clear, then you can get back online. But that really is the best thing you can do, because the longer, sometimes people will just turn their device down, but power it down, but not all the way, because they just kind of go to sleep.
Yeah.
Well, depending on what's done in there, they could still have access, or they know when it's back online and such. So immediately disconnect. That's the best thing that you can do when in doubt.
And that's so simple and such like common sense. It's just not something you intuitively think of.
Right.
So that's great. Carrie, how long should you disconnect for then, before, let's say it's your phone and you accidentally click something, boom, go into airplane mode. How long?
So it depends on how long it takes to check your device or to look to see what damage may have been done. So, if you're pretty tech savvy and you can do it yourself, then oftentimes, like if you have an iPhone, one of
Yeah.
the best things you can do is turn off the Wi-Fi when you're in it, and then
Yeah.
power it down for about like 10 minutes and let it boot back up again, start it back up again. And
Yeah.
oftentimes that'll clear out a lot of the little things. Like if you're searching on Safari and you get a pop-up and says, oh, congratulations, you won a new iPhone, or those types of things,
Yeah.
just shut the whole thing down, let it sit for a few minutes, power it back up, and that clears it out. The other thing you can do while you're offline, look at the apps installed on the device. Make sure there's nothing on there you don't recognize, like a remote access software or anything like that. If you had clicked on the link and it took you to what looked like a login page, and you put a username and password, because it looked just like the login for either your email, your bank, your credit card, your whatever it might have been. After you disconnect from the internet on that device, if you have another device, immediately go to see if you can log into that account. You go to the website that and try to log in, or at least contact that company and just say, hey, I just clicked on this. I don't know if my account's been compromised. I just need to reset, everything. And then you can power back up. But if you're not as tech savvy or comfortable with checking your device, I would leave it off until you have somebody check it for you. We can't see what these things are designed to do. It's all being done on the back end. That's the hard part.
Yeah. So what else? What else are you seeing out there, Carrie? And what else do we need to look out for?
So still the tried and true scams, they're always out there because they're successful. They make the criminals a lot of money. They just modify them so that it throws people off. So the big one that we're still seeing, the old PayPal email. And it would say, here's an invoice. And if you clicked on the invoice, then, it could install malware. Or then the version was, it looked like it was a receipt for buying cryptocurrency or paying for Norton antivirus or something like that. And then down at the bottom, it would say, if you changed your mind or if you didn't do this, you have 12 hours or 24 hours to contact us to request a refund. People see that, they panic, they call the number. The company answers PayPal. It is not PayPal. They end up having remote access software installed on their device. And if you store passwords in your web browser, which is the worst place to store them, now the criminal's in all of your accounts. So that's what we're seeing a lot of that still with that sense of urgency that, oh, well, here's this, but if you didn't do it, give us a call right away. Again, doing that privacy pause. But the AI has made these things, emails, text messages, even the fake websites that, spoofed websites look exactly like a login page for, say, Bank of America, but it's not. This is all AI that's doing this. And criminals are using the AI to do research on their targets. So when they call you, they know your information, they know things about you, and it took them merely seconds. They just asked AI, tell me about this person. And they can get the information coming back. So we need to be much more careful about when we interact, whether it's phone, email, text message. Don't just assume because they know certain things about you that it's legitimate, because it's
Yeah.
real easy for them to look it up.
Yep. That's great. That's great advice. As we're landing the plane here, Carrie, can you share with us two things, actually? First, love to understand a little bit more of how you can help other people if there are people that listen, like myself, that want to get additional support, guidance, whatever it is, go through your process to button things up. And then lastly, any other like free resources that you could recommend to the audience for them to learn more on protecting themselves from fraud?
Absolutely. So for the free resource, the easiest thing you can do is go to my website, which is carriekerskie.com. And on the website, we have podcast episodes, YouTube videos. We have a blog, which is articles on there, all about different ways of protecting yourself. So there's a lot of information on there where you can just, search within the content, especially on the blog, and you can find various articles. If you go to carriekerskie.com/tip sheet, all one word, we'll send to you the sheet on how to add the credit freeze. And with the 5 credit bureaus, actually now there's 6 that we recommend. So you'll get the information of how to do all of that. And by also doing it, you sign up for our monthly email. We do not spam. There's no sales. It's just every month we send something out about here's the latest threat, here's what you need to know, and here's how to protect yourself. So that's a resource that we put out for people. The other thing about, how do we help people? If someone's already a victim, then obviously we can help them recover. If it's something tech related, our process typically is we have a tech partner that we work with, or if somebody else has their own, we make sure that the computers are cleaned or the devices are all clear before we get involved. Because if not, if we start doing what we're doing, but the devices still have stuff on them, it's just going to circumvent everything. So anything tech related, we need to have those devices all checked before we can start working. And we do the heavy lifting. We might have to hop on a 3-way phone call with a company to dispute or such, but we ask the questions and we know what to say to get the results done. As far as with our kind of comprehensive or VIP plan, if you will, the approach that we take with helping people with protecting themselves, it's a 3-part process. So you have the prevention, the awareness, and the recovery. Now, I'm in Southwest Florida, so we say stay on par because we're golf capital. So we always have the little golf reference in there. But the prevention, awareness, recovery. So prevention, we will help put in place prevention measures for specific types of identity theft that can be prevented. And then we will also do the awareness because, again, not everything can be prevented. So that's where the monitoring and where we become partners with our clients. We monitor for what we can, clients monitor for their stuff. No reason for us to be monitoring bank accounts, credit cards. We don't know what's normal for you.
Right.
So if the client has an issue, they would contact us. And then again, if there is an issue, that's where the restoration comes in because you can't prevent or monitor for all types of identity theft. It's impossible. People are busy, scams happen, they click on links. That's why we have the restoration or recovery included in it. So it's a 3-part process that we do with our clients.
Excellent. All right. Carrie, thanks so much. It was great as always. And I think this is probably something to do once a year to keep people updated. We got 2 years under our belt, and I look forward to working with you personally as well, Carrie.
Well, thank you. Same here. And I know it's such a great conversation. It goes by quick. It doesn't feel like it's been the whole time.
It does. All right. We'll see everybody on the next podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Holistic Wealth and Health Podcast. We hope we inspired you to make changes so you can live your best life. If you want to find out more about what we do, or if you want to have a holistic wealth and health financial plan, please call 456-833-7000. Please subscribe to the podcast and share it widely with your friends and family. Financial planning and advisory services are offered through Prosperity Capital Advisors, PCA, an SEC-registered investment advisor with its principal place of business in the state of Ohio. J.L. Smith Holistic Wealth Management and PCA are separate, non-affiliated entities. PCA does not provide tax or legal advice. Insurance and tax services offered through J.L. Smith Holistic Wealth Management are not affiliated with PCA. Information received from this podcast should not be viewed as individual investment advice. Product discussions and illustrations are hypothetical in nature and will vary based on many factors, including, but not limited to, age, health, product, insurance carrier, and product design. You should consult the insurance carrier website and policy for detailed information. For information pertaining to the registration status of PCA, please contact the firm or refer to the investment advisor public disclosure website, www.advisorinfo.sec.gov. For additional information about PCA, including fees and services, send for our disclosure statement as set forth on Form ADV from PCA using the contact information herein. Please read the disclosure statement carefully before you invest or send money.